those ancient mythology gods. Figures like Zeus, Shiva, Thor, and Enki have been described for thousands of years as beings who descended from the heavens to teach us agriculture, science, and civilization, and even created humanity in their own image. When we look closely at history, we see gods and sacred people descending from the sky or returning to the heavens in every era, according to their beliefs. But they all share a common trait: blinding lights, thunder-like sounds, fire, and smoke described during their ascent and descent. And where did they come from? The most magical, unreachable point for the people of that time: the stars. So, who exactly were these celestial beings with superior abilities and technologies that shocked the people of their time? Were they merely fictional creations of the era's imagination and beliefs? Or, based on recent archaeological findings and translations of ancient texts, were they extraterrestrials who genetically designed and created us even for their own purposes? Come, let's solve this mystery together. Let's go to Anunnaki, Turkey. For almost 150 years, this city has been a major focus for archaeologists. Why? Because the legendary city of Troy, mentioned in the famous Iliad epic, is believed to be here. In 1968, amateur archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann claimed to have found the site of the Trojan War. This epic was written in the 8th century BC. For years, many scientists and educators insisted that this event was merely a fictional war featured in epics. But Schliemann ignored them and revealed the ancient city in all its glory. The impact of this discovery on academia was enormous, immediately raising the question: if this event in the epic is real, could the stories in other epics and myths also be true? Could the gods and goddesses of ancient mythology have really lived? If so, where did they come from, and where are they now? The common denominator of celestial beings. Now we are in Greece. Thousands of tourists visit ancient ruins like the Necropolis, the Temple of Delphi, and the Parthenon, which were built thousands of years ago to honor the gods. When we look at Greek myths and epics, we find striking common details about these beings for whom temples were built. They were much bigger, more imposing, and more beautiful than humans. And notably, they descended from the heavens using various vehicles. It also stands out that almost all of them possessed specific tools with special powers. Although most people initially thought these descriptions were solely products of Greek imagination, new archaeological excavations have shown us that these beings feature similarly in almost all ancient cultures, not just Greek mythology. What is more interesting is that despite thousands of kilometers of distance and thousands of years of difference between these cultures, they all incorporated similar beings into their beliefs and cultures, only with different names. Could all this be a coincidence? Or do all these sky gods actually refer to the same individuals? Our journey takes us to the first known civilization, ancient Sumer. This civilization, established around 4000 BC, provides us with very detailed information about these celestial gods, and even recounts that they lived alongside them. The Sumerians called these gods who came from the sky the Anunnaki. A direct translation of the word Anunnaki means the royal lineage that came from the celestial one. The technical details of creation, the Sumerians claimed that they created humankind in their own image to reduce their own workload. Yes, you heard that right. The phrase "we created you in our image" is narrated in great detail in Sumerian mythology, nearly 5,000 years before the Abrahamic religions, describing an alien race genetically creating humans in their likeness. I want to read you a part of the epic. Mix the clay in the heart of the void. Namu shall bring forth the limbs. Ninma shall work as your superior. The fate and appearance of the newborn shall be bound to the gods. This is the human. It is thought that the concept of clay in that first line actually refers to genetic code. But because the Sumerians of that era didn't even have a word to explain it, they called it the creative essence, or clay. The Enuma Elish epic seems to support this. In the clay DNA, human and God shall be bound together. The soul and body shall mature from a God. Thus, this network of blood shall be ensured forever. Surprising, isn't it? In the holy books of all monotheistic religions, God is depicted as creating humanity in His image, or with His own hands, and breathing His spirit into it, and it doesn't stop only with creation. The Sumerian civilization, thousands of years before the invention of the telescope, categorized all the planets in the solar system, recorded seasonal cycles, the movements of the stars, and even how the Earth was formed in detail. There seems to be no logical explanation for them calculating these things during that period, yet the facts are evident. Furthermore, the Sumerians called the homes they built for their gods zig. They taught humans agriculture and urbanization. Even more interestingly, they detailed where and how they extracted gold for the gods, and even how the blue stone, or uranium, which makes humans sick but was used by the gods, was mined. Celestial weapons and cultural connections. Let's continue our journey. We are back in Greece. The sacred Mount Olympus was the home of the Greek gods and mythology. According to the epics, the gods lived here in their sublime homes, made of gold and silver, and illuminated by bright, diamond-like lights, determining the fate of humans. The 12 main gods and goddesses, led by Zeus, had special abilities, or rather, weapons. For example, Zeus, the leader of the gods, held a lightning bolt depicted as a thunder weapon. It was so powerful that he could destroy an entire city if he was angry. But perhaps the most important one for the Greeks was Apollo, depicted with his flying chariot in the skies. Who taught the Greeks construction techniques, astronomy, and art hundreds of years later, when the Roman Empire began ruling Europe and the Mediterranean? They continued offering gratitude to their celestial gods, just like the ancient Greeks. The same beings began to be referred to by different names once again in history. For instance, the entity who was Enlil in Sumerian and Zeus in Greek was named Jupiter by the Romans. Similarly, Enki, the Sumerian god of waters, who was Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea, was named Neptune in Rome. As you can see in these examples, as we trace back through history, we understand that only the names changed, but the individuals being referred to remained the same. Some academics explain this similarity through trade flows that occurred over the years. However, this claim falls apart when examining the mythologies of South American and Asian civilizations, which have no connection whatsoever to the region, because there, too, the same beings appear, coming down from the heavens under different names to educate humans. Now we are in South America, in Mayan lands, when we examine the legends of this civilization, which was highly advanced in astronomy, stonework, and agriculture. We encounter the god Kukulkan. According to the legend, after a great catastrophe where many countries were submerged under water, Kukulkan arrived from the eastern sea to the Mayan land, and even in a boat without paddles. The vessel that brought him, due to its shape, was likened to a feathered, fire-spitting serpent with its long neck turned towards the horizon. This depiction, the fire-spitting serpent, likely reminded you of the person we just discussed, Apollo, who taught humans with his flying chariot. Returning to the similarity of the vehicles used by the gods, two civilizations provide perhaps the most detailed information on this matter: the ancient Norse and the Hindus. In Norse mythology, Thor uses the sacred hammer Mjolnir, which commands thunder like Zeus's weapon. Hindu epics Mahabharata, Ramayana mention incredibly powerful weapons used by the gods against their enemies. For example, Rama's unstoppable arrow, which created the effect of a nuclear bomb where it landed. Furthermore, they mention the sky homes of the gods, which are depicted as hanging suspended in the air. It was obviously impossible for people thousands of years ago to understand such devices. So they were forced to describe what they saw using natural formations, flying vehicles, and holy scriptures. People don't know these details because they might assume people keep their holy books tucked away in a corner of their homes. Instead of reading them, let's start with the Torah, the holy book of the Jews. Here we encounter a mysterious prophet named Enoch, who is also known as Prophet Idris in the Quran. Although older versions of the Torah contained a much more detailed section about Prophet Enoch's experiences, these sections were removed from the New Testament during the time of Constantine I, based on the rationale that they might lead people astray from religion. The remaining lines from the vast section about Enoch, removed from the Torah and New Testament, are simply, God took him up to himself with a chariot of fire. The famous chariot of fire is before us once again, when we turn to the Bible. The story of Prophet Ezekiel and his description of the situation he experienced is truly extraordinary. He describes the heavens opening up and a rotating, fire-spitting, amber-colored vehicle descending before him. The Jews also used the word amber for metallic objects. Don't forget, it is said that for beings descended from the vehicle through the dust and smoke, these beings are depicted in the Bible as four-winged, four-headed, and having bodies like polished bronze. In the continuation of the story, Ezekiel tells us that he was taken aboard the vehicle by these creatures, toured the heavens, and received knowledge about the future. Just imagine the difficulty a person living 2,600 years ago would have trying to describe technology. Ezekiel did his best to describe perhaps the oldest and most detailed alien abduction case to us. When we look at Islam, similar stories appear in a few different forms. Remember Prophet Muhammad's encounter with Gabriel, whom he described as a being of light, in the cave of Hira. Even the event known as the Miraj Ascension is almost exactly the same as the experience of Prophet Ezekiel. The prophet says he rode a mount named Barak with Gabriel. The meaning of the word Burak is that which brings one closer to God, and it is derived from the Arabic word bark, meaning lightning, to shine, and to glitter. Once again, we have a shiny, glittering, and flying vehicle. If you have watched the video up to this point, you will realize that there is no such thing as a coincidence. The Anunnaki and the ruling classes in the Quran. You can also find information about extraterrestrial beings, like the jinn and angels. Here, let's not forget that the word jinn means foreigners who are not from here, and angel melek means holy messenger descending from the sky. Rulers, maliks, kings, in the Quran. There are warnings that those who worship those beings Lat, Uzza, Menet will not be saved from their sins. This is because Muslims are reminded that Allah is the Lord of both these beings and Sirius Star, which was considered their sacred home and worshipped. This is a very important point. Lat, Uzza, and Menat were not just ordinary stone-carved idols in the Kaaba of that time. The entity worshipped as Lat was the goddess Athena in Greek mythology, whose Sumerian name is Inanna, one of the ruling Anunnaki. Uzza and Menot also appear rooted in the Sumerian Anunnaki, Inanna. So, these three idols, worshipped as the daughters of Allah during that period, were actually the same entity. The relationships between these celestial gods in mythology and humans involved romantic and sexual relations. These relationships resulted in the emergence of demigods and beings called. Once again, Nephilim. We face ordinary beings marketed as gods, but who acted upon human impulses and fundamentally, lust. The children born from these relationships were described as possessing superior qualities, being more intelligent and stronger than a normal human. This is precisely why everyone in the ruling class, from pharaohs to kings, claimed the right to rule, by asserting that their blood came from these celestial beings and their demigod children, even if it wasn't true. The departure and aftermath we have more or less understood how an extraterrestrial race called the Anunnaki created humans thousands of years ago for their own menial tasks, and how this affected modern belief systems. Of course, let's remember that this creation example was given because it appears in Sumerian myths, and it is not 100% proven. So, Why did these beings suddenly withdraw from the planet? The Anunnaki had lived on Earth for a very long time, and naturally, they distributed their descendants and lineages across the planet to control human groups in various regions. However, the lower-level Anunnaki, driven by a greater lust for power, began fighting to claim territory in each other's regions. As a result of this devastating war, the Middle East region became almost uninhabitable, and millions of people died. Consequently, Anu, the leader of the Anu, ordered all Anunnaki to withdraw from Earth and leave the planet to humans. Following this, these good aliens, who had been among us for thousands of years, quickly vanished from human lives. Humans, no longer receiving commands from their gods, assumed they had left because they were angered, and started building altars and temples everywhere, attempting to communicate with their gods. This futile effort led to the birth of the clergy class, which unfortunately became corrupt over time, turning into exploiters of the populace. With the rise of ignorance, the belief system, which fundamentally consisted of a few main gods, turned into identifying everything with a god of harvest, god of rain, etc. They attributed all natural cycles they couldn't explain to a god, moving away from scientific development. And today, with our developing understanding of technology and science, we are witnessing firsthand how these bigoted beliefs are beginning to collapse. As I said at the beginning, even events you see as completely unrelated are actually tightly interconnected, and humanity has started slowly unraveling the details of these knots. I will share these topics with you in much more detail in the next video.